Every lie has an expiration date, and yours just rotted in front of the whole world. Chosen one, let that sit heavy for a second. The people who thought they could hide you, erase you, or disguise you as ordinary just got exposed in the worst way possible. They didn't just drop the ball, they shattered their own mask. Oops. Now everybody knows you've been that one all along, and no amount of excuses or backpedaling can stitch that secret back together. They played the game too long, and the universe finally flipped the board right in their face. Now, imagine this for a moment. Chosen one. Picture a snake that slithers in the dark, convinced no one sees it. It thinks the shadows protect it, thinks silence means safety. But then, bam, the floodlights slam on, and every eye in the room catches the snake mid-slither. There's no crawling back into hiding. That's exactly what just happened to your enemies. They spent years whispering lies, building illusions, stacking cards to cover your truth. But when the universe ripped the curtain down, it was their shame that got revealed, not yours. And the sick irony. They dug the very pit they just fell into. Here's the fact they can't outrun. Psychological research shows people naturally cling to truth longer than deception. Lies demand constant maintenance, constant energy to survive. But truth doesn't need rehearsal. It carves itself into memory like stone. That's why no matter how many rumors they pushed, no matter how many staged setups they spun, the truth about you stayed alive beneath it all. And when the slip came, and oh, it came hard, it wasn't your name in question. It was theirs. Their credibility, their so-called control, their whole fake empire went up in smoke. They didn't just mess up, chosen one, they committed public self-destruction. And thank you, chosen one, for standing here with me in this moment. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing the like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls, because it's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. Thank you for being part of this mission. You are part of a force bigger than any lie, stronger than any smear, unstoppable against every shadow. Back to the truth. They underestimated you so deeply that it became their addiction. They thought if they kept labeling you as average, the world would swallow it whole. But what they didn't calculate is the timing of the universe. The universe waits for the exact moment where exposure hurts the most, and then it lets the truth rip wide open. That moment is now. They thought they had years to keep you boxed in, but all they did was set you up for the most dramatic reveal anyone could imagine. Think about this. If someone hides a diamond in mud, the diamond doesn't lose its shine. In fact, when it's finally cleaned, it glows even brighter because of what it survived. That's you, chosen one. For years, they tried to bury your brilliance under dirt, gossip, and silence. But now, the dirt has fallen away, and the brilliance is blinding everyone. They're squinting, covering their eyes, because your light exposes everything they hoped would stay buried. And there's no going back. Once the world sees a diamond, no one can be tricked into believing it's just a stone. Secrets don't crawl back into shadows once daylight hits them. And this is daylight at its rawest. You've proven that no smear campaign, no rumor mill, no sabotage machine can bury what is undeniable. They thought silencing you would keep them safe, but the universe twisted it. Your silence became the echo that haunted them until the reveal. And when the reveal hit, it stripped them bare. Their lies look pitiful now, their schemes look childish, their masks look cracked. The whole stage flipped, and the audience saw the truth. You've been that one all along. And here's the slap they'll feel forever. They can't reverse it. They can't stuff the truth back into a closet. Once exposed, it grows, it spreads, it sticks in every conversation, every glance, every guilty whisper they overhear. They wanted you forgotten, but now you're unforgettable. They wanted you hidden, but now you're the headline. They wanted you ordinary, but now you're extraordinary in the eyes of everyone they tried to deceive. The irony burns, doesn't it? They poured all their energy into burying you, but what they really buried was their own reputation. So buckle up, chosen one, because this is your coronation. What was meant to shame you became your spotlight. What was meant to silence you became your amplifier. Their slip wasn't just an accident. It was the universe pulling the rug out from under them, exposing you at the exact moment where it stings the most. And now the streets know, the crowds know, even their closest allies whisper your name with that mix of awe and fear. You've been that one from the very beginning, and now the whole world sees it. No more shadows, no more lies, no more masks. The secret is out, and it's not just their mistake, it's their permanent scar. And for you, it's your undeniable proof. So, chosen one, before we break this all down piece by piece, let me ask you, can you feel it in your chest right now? That rush of knowing the secret is out, that their slip turned into your spotlight. If you're ready to claim that energy, drop a comment number 777 below. And if this message lights a fire in you, bless the team behind it with your support, whether it's a word, a share, or a gift, because every single spark keeps this truth spreading wider. Remember, they tried to keep you hidden, but now you're part of a force that refuses to stay silent. Stay with me until the end, because if you really are that chosen one, you're going to feel the pull to keep listening. And now, let's dive into it step by step. Believe me, this is only the beginning. Number 1, their kingdom was built on your silence. Now it's collapsing in flames. Every empire built on stolen ground eventually burns to ash. Chosen one, this is what you need to understand. They never built their strength on truth or talent or character. They built it entirely on your silence. Your silence was their crown. Your silence was their stage. Your silence was their shield. As long as you kept quiet, they could parade around unchecked, play the roles they were never qualified for: hero, victim, leader, savior. But strip away your silence, and suddenly the mask rips right off their faces. Now, let's call it what it really was. They weren't thriving because they were great. They were thriving because you stayed quiet. That quiet was their oxygen. They lived off the assumption that you'd swallow your pain and hide your light forever. They believed your humility would be their eternal protection, that your patience meant permanent invisibility. But silence is not forever. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not weakness. Silence is only the fuse. And chosen one, when the fuse finally burns out, what happens? Explosion, detonation, a blast louder than anything they ever screamed about you. And that blast just went off. Let's imagine this for a second. Imagine someone stealing your voice, pocketing it, and walking into every room, using it as if it were their own. They win awards with it. They gather sympathy with it. They wrap themselves in it like armor. But one day, you step forward, you clear your throat, and the entire room freezes because suddenly they realize the sound they've been following was never theirs. That's the terror they're living in right now. Your very existence speaks louder than all their carefully polished lies. And here's the hard fact that cracks them open. Psychology has shown us that people trust first-hand testimony far more than second-hand stories. When the real source steps forward, everything else gets downgraded to rumor. That's what you represent, the undeniable source. Their entire reputation was built on unchallenged stories. But now, the source is awake. The silence is gone. The story is yours, and it has the weight of truth dripping from every word. They can't outrun that. They assumed wrong, chosen one. They thought pain would paralyze you. They thought humility would keep you hidden. They thought time would erase your significance. But patience was never paralysis. Patience was your strategy. And now that it's broken, the flood can't be stopped. Why else do you think they spent so much energy scrambling to bury your story before you even had the chance to tell it? Why else were they terrified of the possibility of you speaking? Because they knew the second you did, their false kingdom collapses like a house of wet paper. Let me ask you this: if they were so confident in their own truth, why did they need you quiet? Why did they need your story suppressed? Why did they guard against your voice like it was a nuclear threat? The answer is obvious. They knew your silence was the only thing holding their fraud together. They weren't scared of noise. They were terrified of your noise. They weren't scared of lies. They were terrified of your truth. Because your truth comes with receipts, scars, authenticity that can't be manufactured or duplicated. That's why they fought so hard to keep you silent. It wasn't your words they feared. It was the evidence you carried in your being. And here's the irony that stings them the most. The same silence that once protected them is now the proof of their guilt. Every moment you stayed quiet wasn't weakness. It was evidence. Evidence of how much they feared you. Evidence of how much they needed you hidden. And when silence finally broke, it was like a dam collapsing. The roar of truth drowned their whispers instantly. They can't put the water back in the dam. They can't reseal what's already cracked. Their credibility was a counterfeit currency, and it only worked as long as your silence was in circulation. But you stopped the circulation. You broke the system, and now their entire empire is bankrupt. They don't get to hide behind your silence anymore. They don't get to stand tall on borrowed ground. Their stage has crumbled, and all that's left is the wreckage of lies exposed in daylight. That's why this exposure hurts them like acid. It doesn't just reveal what happened, it reveals the fragility of everything they built. Their foundation wasn't made of truth or strength. It was made of your restraint. And restraint, once lifted, turns into revelation. What they mistook for weakness has turned out to be patience sharpened into a blade. And when patience finally strikes, it strikes with precision. They gambled everything on you staying silent forever. And now that the silence has shattered, so are they. Think of it this way: chosen one, they built a castle out of glass, thinking you'd never throw a stone. But the stone wasn't your rage. The stone was your truth. And when it finally left your hand, the crash was deafening. Shards everywhere, walls collapsing, their reflections staring back at them, broken into 1,000 pieces. That's the sound of their empire dying. That's the sound of your silence turning into judgment. This is why you can stand tall now, because every moment of quiet you endured, every insult you swallowed, every false label you carried, it's all become part of your arsenal. The silence they mocked is now the very thing that proves your power. You didn't break. You didn't vanish. You didn't surrender. You waited. And waiting was your greatest weapon. Because now, when you finally speak, or even when you just stand present, the universe itself amplifies your truth in a way they can't drown out. Chosen one, understand this clearly. Silence is not the end. Silence is the setup. And the moment it breaks, it becomes the thunder they can't silence. They gambled wrong, and now they're paying the price. Their kingdom of shadows has collapsed under the weight of your voice, and the world finally sees the truth. The one they tried to erase, the one they depended on staying invisible, has been the real force all along. They didn't just lose their grip, they lost their entire identity, because their identity was never real. It was borrowed. borrowed from your silence, and now the debt has come due. Number 2, they mocked the blueprint, but you were the architect of their collapse. They mocked the map because they couldn't read it. They laughed at the design because they lacked the vision, but laugh all they want. A blueprint doesn't need applause to become a skyscraper. Chosen one, this is the brutal truth they never wanted to face. While they ridiculed you, you were building. While they sneered, you were planting. While they wasted, you were preparing. And now, the very foundation they thought was a joke is the ground beneath their trembling feet. Let's not sugarcoat it. They dismissed your ideas as childish fantasies. They told you your vision was impossible, that your dreams were too big, that your goals were laughable. Why? Because it was easier for them to laugh than to admit they couldn't see what you saw. That's always the coward's trick. Ridicule is cheaper than effort. Mockery costs nothing, while building costs everything. But here's where they slipped. They mistook your imagination for delusion, when in reality you were drafting a future too vast for their narrow minds to comprehend. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one, imagine an architect standing with rolled-up blueprints in their hands while the crowd jeers. The crowd can't read the lines, the measurements, the vision. They point and laugh at what looks to them like scribbles on paper. But fast forward a few years, and those scribbles become towering skyscrapers, cities of glass and steel that scrape the sky. The same people who laughed now walk through those buildings in awe, forgetting their mockery, but remembering your design. That's you. That's your story. They laughed at lines they couldn't read, not realizing those lines were the future they'd soon live in. And here's another quote for you. Ridicule is the applause of the ignorant. That's all their laughter ever was, a smokescreen for their blindness. They weren't laughing because you were foolish. They were laughing because they were terrified of what your focus made them feel about themselves. Deep down, they knew you were onto something. They just couldn't admit it, because admitting it would mean facing their own lack of vision, their own lack of discipline, their own lack of courage. So let me ask you, chosen one, were you really wasting your time all those nights, those sacrifices, those lonely steps? Or were you quietly laying bricks for something greater? You already know the answer. Every late night, every painful choice, every seed planted when no one was watching, it was all part of your design. They couldn't see it because they weren't meant to. Vision doesn't belong to the mocker. Vision belongs to the builder. And here's the irony that burns them every single day. While they mocked you, they were secretly borrowing from you. They laughed at your discipline, but when nobody was looking, they mimicked it. They ridiculed your originality, but then tried to copy pieces of it. They sneered at your resilience, but then quietly used the same strategies you created just to keep themselves afloat. They feasted off your scraps, and yet they still had the audacity to laugh. But no matter how much they copied, they could never replicate the source, because they didn't have the blueprint. You did. Imagine this, chosen one. Imagine someone breaking into a construction site, stealing a few bricks, a few nails, and thinking they've built the whole building. That's exactly how they treated your work. They mistook access for ownership. They thought being near you meant being equal to you. They thought mocking you gave them authority over you. But ownership doesn't belong to the thief. It belongs to the architect who drafted the plan from the ground up. They never drew the map. They never calculated the structure. They never held the vision. That power has always been yours, and now the framework points directly back to you. Visionaries aren't validated by laughter, they're validated by results. That's where we are now. The laughter has stopped. The jokes don't land anymore, because the proof of your blueprint is here, undeniable, unshakable, standing tall. The same voices that once mocked are silent now, or worse, muttering excuses, backpedaling, trying to act like they knew all along. But the truth is, carved into history, you were the architect from the very beginning. And here's another image for you. Imagine a painter standing before a blank canvas. The crowd circles, laughing at the emptiness, mocking every brushstroke that doesn't yet make sense. But when the painting is finished, those same people are lined up in galleries, staring in awe, acting like they always believed in it. That's exactly what's happening with you now. The blueprint is complete, the design is visible, the vision undeniable. And suddenly everyone wants to stand close, forgetting they once laughed. But let's not let them off the hook, chosen one. Ask yourself, why did they laugh in the first place? Because laughter is easier than courage. Because mocking you was easier than admitting they didn't have the guts to try. Because the only way they could feel big was to belittle the one actually building. Their laughter wasn't truth, it was fear in disguise. And now the fear is fully exposed, because they can no longer deny that every decision you made, every sacrifice you endured, every risk you took, it was part of a larger blueprint they couldn't see. And that blueprint is not just surviving, it's thriving, it's undeniable. It's towering over them as living proof that you weren't foolish, you were focused, you weren't dreaming, you were designing, you weren't lost, you were leading. Imagine this final metaphor, chosen one. Imagine a seed buried in the ground while the world laughs at the dirt. They say, look, nothing's happening. Look, it's wasted. But underneath, roots are spreading, stems are pushing, life is forming. And then one day, the tree breaks through the soil, unstoppable, undeniable, stretching toward the sun. That's you. That's your blueprint made flesh. And the ones who mocked? They're standing in the shade of your tree, pretending they never laughed. So here's the closing slap. Chosen one, they thought the joke was on you, but the joke is on them. They laughed at the blueprint, but the blueprint outlived their laughter. They tried to dismiss the architect, but the architect is the only reason they even have ground to stand on now. Their mockery was noise, your design was destiny, and history doesn't remember the laughers, it remembers the builders. Number 3. The evidence they buried became the spotlight that exposed them. They thought silence would erase the story, but scars scream louder than their lies ever could. Chosen one, this is where the tables turn in a way they can't undo. They believed if they ignored your struggles, mocked your victories, and drowned your truth under fabrications, the world would never know who you were. But here's the sting. They forgot the world has eyes of its own. People notice resilience even when no one announces it. People notice scars because scars don't lie. And people notice strength that shouldn't exist, strength that rises after betrayal, sabotage, and traps designed to crush you. That's why, despite every eraser stroke they pressed against your name, the world has noticed you. Think about this. When you see a tree split by lightning but still standing tall, does anyone have to explain its strength? No. The wound itself testifies. That's you, your scars, your survival, your ability to move forward despite everything. They've become undeniable evidence, louder than any lie. They worked overtime to convince others you were weak, but every escape you made, every betrayal you outlived, left permanent proof that outshines their cover-ups. Proof can't be buried when it walks, breathes, and shines in front of the world. Here's the fact that crushes them. Perception is not fully in their control. The human brain is wired to pick up contradictions. When people see someone rise where they were told someone fell, they question the storyteller. That's exactly what's happening now. The version of you they painted doesn't match the living evidence. They said you were unstable, yet your consistency is undeniable. They said you wouldn't survive, yet your very existence mocks their predictions daily. They said you were broken, yet people see you walking taller than ever. The gap between their narrative and reality has grown so wide that anyone watching can spot the fraud. Now imagine this, chosen one. Imagine someone scribbling lies across a canvas, thinking they've ruined the painting. But as the paint dries, the original picture bleeds through, clearer than before. That's your story. No matter how much they tried to cover it, the truth seeped through the cracks. And now, the very scars they mocked have become your spotlight, drawing eyes and pulling people closer. Their lies are no longer competing with silence. They're competing with undeniable evidence. And evidence always wins. The more people connect the dots, the weaker their grip becomes. That's why they scramble now, panicked, because once people see for themselves, the mask of deception crumbles. They can't erase what's alive. They can't erase what's visible. They can't erase you. The world noticed, chosen one. The secret is out, and the truth they tried to bury has outlived every lie they ever told. Number 4, their empire shrunk the moment you refused to stay small. They only looked tall because you were forced to kneel. Chosen one, that's the gut truth they can't swallow. Their entire survival strategy wasn't built on real power, real talent, or real strength. It was built on an illusion. The illusion that you would stay small. Smallness was their shield, their ladder, their camouflage. If you stayed quiet, they could shout. If you stayed hidden, they could glow. If you stayed stuck, their lies could march around unchallenged. Their bigness was never real. It only existed in contrast to the cage they forced you into. But cages break, don't they? You didn't just break out, you outgrew it. While they were mocking, you were moving. While they were sleeping, you were building. While they were feeding off illusions, you were feeding on resilience. And the second you rose, their world started collapsing, because everything they built was designed to work only if you stayed beneath them. That's why your growth feels like an earthquake to them. It shattered their foundation. Now imagine this for a moment. Imagine a bully who only looks strong because they're standing on someone's back. They puff their chest, wave their arms, shout for attention. But the moment that person stands up, the bully falls flat on their face. That's what just happened. They were never strong. They were perched on your silence. And when you stood tall, they hit the ground. Here's the fact that rips them open. Psychologists call it relative dominance, a fragile kind of power that only exists as long as someone else stays beneath. They rehearsed their story so often, "You're weak, you're nothing, you'll never make it," that they convinced even themselves it was true. But your rise didn't just destroy their lies, it exposed their dependency. They were never powerful on their own. Their entire position was borrowed from your containment. Let me ask you this, chosen one, were they ever big, or did they only look big while you were boxed in? Their size was an illusion, a shadow that stretched only because you stayed in the corner, and when you stepped into your light, their shadow shrank into nothing. That's why your expansion terrifies them. Every inch you grow, every step you take forward, shrinks their entire stage until it looks pathetic. They depended on you doubting yourself. They depended on you staying boxed. They depended on you being voiceless. And yet, here you are, voice echoing, confidence blazing, presence undeniable. Their blueprint has collapsed because their plan was never about building themselves up. It was always about keeping you down. And now the truth is unmissable. They were never giants. They only looked big while you were small. Number 5, their web of lies rotted while your truth stood like stone. They spent years rehearsing lines, but the truth doesn't audition, it owns the stage. Chosen one, this is where their entire scheme collapses under its own weight. They worked overtime to control the narrative, spinning lies, stretching half-truths, rehearsing stories until they sounded believable even to themselves. They believed if they repeated the lie enough, it would crystallize into fact. But here's the gut punch reality. Lies have an expiration date. They rot, they sour, they collapse because they cannot stand without constant maintenance, and maintenance is exhausting. Truth, on the other hand, doesn't rot, it doesn't weaken, it doesn't need polishing. Truth waits, steady as stone, patient as time itself, until every lie decays and falls apart. That's the fatal flaw in their strategy. They underestimated how memory works. People can carry a lie for a season, yes, but eventually inconsistencies rise. Cracks split open. The script they rehearsed starts sounding fake, too smooth, too polished, too forced. And when that happens, truth doesn't have to scream, it only has to stand. And standing, it shines. Now imagine this. Imagine a fruit coated in wax to make it look fresh. On the outside it shines, but underneath it's rotting. Give it time, and the smell leaks out. The skin wrinkles, the rot becomes undeniable. That's their lies. Shiny on the surface, hollow inside. Meanwhile, truth is like a diamond. It doesn't need coating, it doesn't spoil, it doesn't wither with age. It waits, and when placed beside the rotten fruit, the difference is undeniable. Here's another fact they never saw coming. Psychologists have proven that repeated lies may trick people temporarily, but over time, the brain begins to detect the unnatural patterns. It feels forced. It feels staged. That's exactly what's happening now. People see you, your consistency, your scars, your resilience, and compare it to their forced narrative. And the cracks in their story grow too wide to ignore. So let me ask you, chosen one, did truth need their approval? Did it need their permission to survive? No. Truth existed with or without their recognition. It sat quietly in the background, knowing its moment would come. And when it arrived, it hit harder than any defense you could have spoken. Because truth doesn't argue. Truth is. Now the mask is off. People can see who has been genuine and who has been performing. They see who stood solid and who collapsed under the weight of their own act. And here's the ultimate irony. While they wasted years rehearsing, sweating, and scrambling to protect a fake performance, you simply lived your truth. And truth doesn't expire. That's why they're exposed. That's why they're panicking. The curtain has fallen, and the audience is no longer clapping. The act is over. You're the reality that outlasted their fiction. Number 6, they miscalculated the force that carried you beyond their reach. They measured your wounds like equations, but they forgot. You were never powered by numbers. Chosen one, this is the brutal reality of why their strategy crumbled to dust. They studied you like a problem on a chalkboard. They thought, if they tallied enough setbacks, if they stacked enough lies, if they multiplied the isolation long enough, eventually the sum would equal your downfall. To them, it was simple math. Pressure equals collapse. Rumors equal ruin. Silence equals disappearance. But here's where they failed. They assumed you were running on human fuel alone. What they could never calculate was the unseen force that carried you when logic said you should have folded. They thought your strength was your foundation, so they targeted it. They thought your resources defined you, so they tried to strip them away. They thought your silence was surrender, so they mocked it. But resilience isn't built on what they see. It's built on something beyond their reach. What they couldn't grasp was that every weakness they tried to exploit became an invitation for a greater force to show through you. Now imagine this. Imagine a boxer who thinks his opponent is running out of breath, ready to drop. He throws everything he has, convinced the fight is over. But then, suddenly, the opponent rises, eyes blazing, strength renewed, punching with a force that makes no sense. That's what they faced. They assumed your reserves were limited, but the energy fueling you didn't come from what they could measure. Their math was incomplete. Here's a fact that strips their logic bare. Research has shown people often underestimate resilience because they measure only visible resources, time, energy, money, while ignoring the hidden variables like willpower, adaptability, or sheer purpose. They made that same fatal error. They thought they knew the sum of you. They didn't account for the unseen variables, the unbreakable core that refuses to collapse under pressure. And when their perfect formula broke apart, they were left staring at ruins they couldn't explain. So let me ask you, chosen one, did you survive because they went easy on you? No, you survived because their entire blueprint was flawed. They planned for your downfall, but never factored in what they couldn't touch. That's why their collapse feels so sudden, so absolute. They can't rationalize it. They thought the script was airtight, but the stage they built couldn't hold. Because what's built on illusion doesn't last. Your survival wasn't luck, your rise wasn't chance, and your exposure wasn't coincidence. It was inevitability. They underestimated you, yes, but more than that, they underestimated the force behind you. And that is why they lost. Not because you were too weak to break, but because you were never standing alone to begin with. Number 7. The more they tried to bury you, the louder your name echoed. They threw dirt on your name, but dirt only buries seeds, and seeds grow. Chosen one, this is the brutal irony that keeps them awake at night. Every insult, every rumor, every whisper meant to stain your reputation has done the opposite. They believed if they could smear you enough, twist your story enough, make enough people doubt your worth, they could control not just your image, but their own fragile survival. They thought perception was power. But perception without truth is nothing more than smoke, and smoke always clears. Here's the slap they can't escape. Reputation is not built on gossip, it's built on proof. People don't only listen to what's said, they watch what's lived. They can't deny resilience. They can't deny scars. They can't deny someone who keeps walking after traps, betrayals, and storms. And the harder they tried to smear you, the more curious people became. Why do they attack this person so much? What are they trying to hide? That curiosity became their downfall, because the closer people looked at you, the more truth they saw. Now imagine this. Imagine a painter splashing black paint over a canvas to ruin it, thinking the colors beneath are gone. But when the paint dries, the image underneath bleeds through stronger, bolder, unerasable. That's your story. Every smear, every attack only highlighted the depth of your character. They tried to bury you, but instead, they exposed you. The very resilience they wanted erased became impossible to ignore. And here's the fact that cuts deepest. Lies depend on repetition to survive, but truth only needs to exist once. People may believe a rumor for a moment, but when actions contradict it, the rumor dies. That's what they never understood. They banked on controlling the story, but they couldn't control the evidence. And the evidence was you, your endurance, your consistency, your refusal to collapse when the world expected you to. So let me ask you, chosen one, did their attacks diminish you, or did they amplify you? You already know the answer. Every attempt to humiliate you became free advertising for your resilience. Every smear became proof of how unbreakable you were. Instead of being known as the broken one, you are recognized as the one they couldn't break. Your reputation is now untouchable, not because it was protected from attack, but because it survived attack and came out stronger. They didn't bury you, they planted you, and from the soil of their lies grew roots of credibility they could never manufacture for themselves. What they thought would end you only multiplied your presence. In the end, they wasted years trying to ruin you, and all they accomplished was carving your name deeper into reality. That's the irony. They gave you the spotlight they wanted to steal, and now your reputation doesn't just stand, it towers. It is untouchable. Number 8, you became the living proof they swore couldn't exist. They said legends don't walk the earth until you walked in and made their lies look ridiculous. Chosen one, this is where their entire illusion collapsed. For years, they swore someone like you wasn't real. They told others that strength like yours, integrity like yours, resilience like yours was just myth, just fantasy, just a story used to inspire the gullible. That lie was their safety blanket. As long as people believed you were impossible, they could dismiss you. They could mask their own failures, their own corruption, their own shortcuts. But then you showed up, and suddenly the myth was breathing, moving, undeniable. Now imagine this. Imagine a crowd laughing at the idea of fire breathing until you exhale flames right in front of them. That's the shock they felt. Every act of perseverance, every time you stood unshaken under pressure, every moment you carried yourself with vision and integrity, it tore apart their narrative. You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to explain. Your existence alone was the evidence. And evidence doesn't need permission to be believed. It stands. Here's the fact that cripples them. People don't need theories when they have living proof. And that's what you are, the walking contradiction of everything they preached. They said someone like you couldn't exist. And yet here you are, fully real, fully present, fully unbreakable. That reality is devastating for them because it doesn't just expose their lies, it exposes their fear. So let me ask you, chosen one, why were they so desperate to declare you impossible? Because if you existed, it meant their excuses were hollow. It meant integrity was possible, and they chose corruption. It meant resilience was possible, and they chose weakness. It meant vision was possible, and they chose shortcuts. Your presence didn't just confront them, it shamed them. It forced people to look at their failures in a mirror they couldn't avoid. The pattern is clear to everyone now. Where there should have been collapse, there was strength. Where there should have been compromise, there was truth. Where there should have been defeat, there was survival. Your life became a template, a living rebuke to every lie they leaned on. And that's why they panic now. Their shield of impossibility is gone. The myth is alive, undeniable, unstoppable. You exist. You endure. You are the proof that their entire narrative was hollow, and that truth will haunt them longer than any rumor ever could. Number 9, their envy became the billboard of your worth. Jealousy is nothing but admiration wearing a cheap mask of hate. Chosen one, that's the truth they can't wash off. Their obsession with you, their constant need to tear you down, has become the loudest evidence of your value. Let's face it, if you were insignificant, if you were just ordinary, would they have wasted this much energy on you? Of course not. Nobodies don't attract envy. Ghosts don't inspire smear campaigns. The only reason they spent years trying to erase you is because your presence burned holes in the illusions they were trying to protect. Now imagine this. Imagine a spotlight in a dark room. People don't throw stones at shadows. They throw them at the light that blinds them. That's why they came for you. Every rumor, every smear, every attempt to rewrite your story wasn't proof of weakness. It was proof you were shining where they couldn't. Their attacks were never random. They were targeted proof that you mattered in ways they could neither accept nor control. Here's the irony that eats them alive. The more they tried to destroy your reputation, the more credibility they handed you. People are watching, and what do they see? They see desperation. They see obsession. They see hatred that's too focused to be casual. And what does that signal? That you are a threat, that you hold influence, that you are the one who makes their false system quake. So let me ask you, chosen one, who's really writing your resume? Is it you or is it them? Because with every jab, every rumor, every smear, they're unintentionally etching proof of your impact in plain sight. Their jealousy is the ink, their envy is the handwriting, and the world is reading it. Think of it like this. When wolves circle one animal, what does the herd notice? The strength of the one being circled. Their focus exposes your importance louder than any praise could. They wanted to erase you, but instead they've highlighted you. They wanted you invisible, but instead they've made you unforgettable. Their envy is no longer a weapon. It's a megaphone. Every ounce of energy they poured into destroying you has become free publicity for your resilience, your power, your undeniable worth. And now the world knows you are not just valuable, you're the force they could never silence. Number 10. Their lies were venom, but you became the cure they couldn't contain. They poured venom into every ear they could reach, but venom always exposes itself when the cure arrives. Chosen one, that's the raw reality of what happened here. For years, they played chemist with people's minds, mixing rumors, stirring doubts, serving up half-truths like poison disguised as wine. They wanted others to sip it slowly until suspicion became habit, until fear replaced trust, until your very name triggered unease. They believed if they spread enough toxicity, your influence would wither. But poison only thrives in the absence of antidote, and you became the antidote. The moment people encountered your presence, their formula began to collapse. Every distortion unraveled, every whisper lost its sting. Because nothing kills poison faster than truth lived out in the open. You didn't have to shout. You didn't have to beg for belief. You simply existed, authentic, consistent, undeniable, and that was enough to neutralize years of venom. Now imagine this. Imagine someone warning the village that the well is poisoned, only for the villagers to drink from it and collapse. Then you arrive with clear water. No debates, no arguments, just pure water that heals. Suddenly no one cares about the warnings anymore. They see with their own eyes who brings life and who brings sickness. That's the dynamic at play. Their poison was temporary. Your integrity was permanent. Here's the fact that slices through their scheme. Lies weaken with exposure, but truth strengthens under scrutiny. That's why their carefully engineered poison couldn't survive once people came close to you. Their venom relied on distance. It relied on silence. It relied on keeping people from experiencing the reality of who you are. But once you stepped forward, speaking boldly, acting without apology, standing firm, their poison lost all power. So let me ask you, chosen one, were you ever the danger they claimed? Or was the danger always them, terrified of what your authenticity revealed about their manipulation? You know the answer. Their desperation to paint you as toxic only spotlighted their own contamination. And now the shift is undeniable. Where fear once lingered, confidence has grown. Where suspicion once echoed, clarity has replaced it. Their venom didn't just fail, it backfired. Every drop they poured only highlighted your role as the cure, the reset, the truth no toxin could kill. You didn't just survive their poison, you became the medicine everyone else was waiting for. Number 11. They rigged the board, but you flipped it and became the judge. They built the casino, stacked the deck, and loaded the dice, but still lost, because the truth doesn't gamble. Chosen one, that's the reality they can't face. The game was never fair. They designed it with you as nothing more than a pawn. Every obstacle, every setback, every twisted rule was engineered to ensure your failure. They stacked the cards, bent the rules, and tried to control the board so that no matter how you played, the outcome would scream defeat. To them, it was never about skill. It was about control. They thought if they scripted the ending, they could lock you into their version of destiny. But here's where they failed. You were never bound to their crooked system. You didn't play by their rules. While they were busy fixing the board, you were quietly mastering the entire game. Every trap they laid became a lesson. Every move they used to corner you became an opening. Every scheme they plotted became proof of how desperate they were to hold power. And in learning their system inside out, you didn't just escape it, you rose above it. Now imagine this. Imagine a referee who spends the whole match cheating to help one side win. The crowd believes the calls until the replay screen flashes the truth. Suddenly, the ref isn't respected anymore. They're exposed. That's exactly what happened. Their lies, their alliances, their manipulations, they all unraveled under exposure. The same audience that once believed them now sees the rigging clearly, and in that moment, the player they tried to sabotage became the judge. You became the standard. Here's the fact they'll never admit. Rigged systems only work in the dark. The moment light shines, the cheat codes look like confessions. You didn't just survive their setup, you revealed it. And once revealed, it lost all its power. The rules they thought were unbreakable became jokes. The traps they thought were invisible became evidence. The game flipped, and with it, the authority shifted into your hands. So let me ask you, chosen one, what's victory? Is it winning by their fake scoreboard, or is it rewriting the rules so truth becomes the only measure? You already know. Their definition of victory died the second your resilience exposed their weakness. You didn't just win, you became the judge. And now the entire board is tilted in your favor because integrity, strategy, and vision have replaced their rigged illusions. They thought they could script your downfall. Instead, you turned their script into proof of their corruption. The player they underestimated is now the authority they can't escape. The board has flipped, the mask is gone, and the judge is you. Number 12. Their last gamble failed because truth doesn't need a key to break in. They thought truth was a prisoner, but truth is the warden. It walks in uninvited and ends the game. Chosen one, this was their fatal miscalculation. They didn't just underestimate you, they underestimated the very nature of truth itself. They thought if they repeated their lies long enough, polished their stories well enough, and managed perception tightly enough, they could bury reality forever. They believed silence was a lock, manipulation was a wall, and fear was the guard at the door. But truth doesn't knock. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for consent. When its moment comes, it breaks through every barrier with force that no human scheme can contain. Think about it. They spent years pouring energy into suppression, crafting lies like stage props, rehearsing lines like desperate actors, manipulating audiences like rigged magicians, and for a while it looked convincing. But lies are fragile performances. The longer they run, the more the cracks show. A script can only hold until reality walks in, and Chosen One, that's what happened. Truth walked in. It didn't need backup. It didn't need applause. Its very existence was enough to shatter the illusion. Now imagine this. Imagine building a dam to hold back the ocean. For a season, it looks strong. People marvel at it, believe in it. But the ocean doesn't ask for permission to rise. It swells, it builds, and eventually the pressure snaps the dam like glass. That's truth. No wall, no gate, no manipulation could hold it back forever. And now their dam has collapsed, and the flood of reality is sweeping them away. Here's the fact they never wanted to face. People eventually notice the weight of inconsistencies. The mind is wired to recognize when stories don't line up. That's why their carefully engineered lies now sound desperate, forced, and hollow. Witnesses speak, scars testify, your very presence stands, and suddenly their performance collapses. They thought truth needed defenders. It never did. Truth defends itself simply by existing. So let me ask you, Chosen One, who really held the power all along? Was it them, with their fabricated narratives, or was it the truth, waiting patiently for its time? You already know the answer. Their mistake was believing they were gatekeepers of reality, as if truth needed their authorization to breathe. It doesn't. It never has. And now the reversal is complete. Their lies are rubble, their schemes exposed, their control shattered. What they swore would remain hidden forever is now glaring, permanent, undeniable. Their final mistake wasn't just underestimating you. It was underestimating the fact that reality cannot be rewritten by fear, by control, or by repetition. Truth doesn't expire. Truth doesn't bow. Truth erupts. And now the world sees it all, clearly, fully, and without apology. So, Chosen Ones, their lies have collapsed, and the truth stands taller than ever. What they tried to bury has become your spotlight, and no scheme can dim it now. Remember, every attempt to erase you only proved how powerful you truly are. If this message lit something inside you, press that like button if you haven't already. And if you're still not part of this growing family, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because together we're spreading truth, resilience, and unstoppable strength across the world. Stay unshakable. Chosen Ones, the universe is watching, and your rise is undeniable.